everyone, it's Annie, and I'm so happy to be back in the Women Who podcast room. I'm here with Andrea, and today we have such an incredible guest with us. As Boss Babe, I love speaking with women in business, women entrepreneurs, and actually our guest today is my first boss in Miami after college, and it's just been such a cool full circle moment that she's been able to come back, in my life. She's always been in my life from a distance, but 10 years later, she's here. She's going to talk about her business, her faith, her trials, how she's been such a successful boutique owner in South Miami for 14 years. And with no further ado, welcome, Vanessa. I'm so happy you're here and that you said yes to come on the Women Who podcast. Again, this is a platform that we just want to dive deep and go into conversations that other people may be afraid to go, maybe want to gatekeep certain things, maybe are more of competition over collaboration. And so if you just want to introduce us to our audience.
You definitely picked the right person. You got an open book here that loves to talk about the nitty-gritty, messy stuff.
Yeah.
My name, as you said, Vanessa. I'm owner of OHM Boutique.
Yeah.
Where am I looking? At
you
you
can look at
us.
I love it. The camera, wherever your eyes. Yeah. Wherever you want to go, yeah.
My name is Vanessa. I'm owner of OHM Boutique. I've done that 14 years now. We just celebrated our 14-year anniversary.
Amen.
Amen. Mm-hmm. By the grace of God, because you kind of blink and it happens. There's a lot of layers to me. It's difficult when people are like, oh, introduce yourself. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably the first thing that makes my hands clammy and sweat. Because, yes, I'm known as OHM Boutique, Vanessa, but if you know me, that's like one tiny little piece. I am a daughter of our beautiful God.
Yes.
I am wearing a rosary around my wrist. I'm very nervous. I'm not big on being on camera or public speaking type things, but I'm excited to do it. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here.
Of course. I couldn't think of anybody else. And I think it's so true. Like, I think it's beautiful what you say. I mean, you've been living and breathing OHM for 14 years, but you say that that's a small part of you. And I think what both Andrea and I are navigating this season, at least, her being a wedding photographer, entrepreneur, and then me doing A Market Social and wanting to take a step back is because we've kind of hit a wall of, we've identified ourselves so much in business. That's all we did. That's all we talked about. And so that's been our whole identity. But we're realizing, that's not who God called us to be. Our work is not everything that we are. It doesn't show our value. Our success doesn't show our worth. And so the fact that you've been such a successful business owner for so many years and you're like, but that's just a small part of me, I think encourages me. And Absolutely. It probably should encourage a lot of women who maybe want to start a hobby or start their own business to say, yeah, you're going to put so much time and effort and work into it, but it's not all of who you are. Did that always, when you first started OHM, did you always know, like, okay, I have to separate this from who Vanessa actually is? Or did that come with time and practice and growing?
Well, more than anything, I kind of want her to share, because we were obviously talking off the mic, but I want her to share how she even got started. Because she was young and she just gave us her age. And so,
to touch on what Annie said, I think it's been a constant struggle for 14 years, trying that identity. Like, oh yeah, Vanessa from OHM, strangers will recognize me. They expect me to be all dolled up all the time. If you know me, I'm a t-shirt and jeans. I haven't put makeup on, aside from like the new arrival shoot that I have to do. Yeah. I haven't put makeup on in a month.
Yeah.
My dream is to own 10 acres somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Same, preaching to the choir.
Right here.
Goats and chickens. Like that's my childhood, and that's what I want to go back to.
Yeah.
Most people look at me and don't see that.
Yeah.
But that identity, that, oh, I sell clothes, oh, I've got to show up that way. I stopped looking at myself that way probably 8 years ago. Okay. I said, no, I'm just here to love. That's how I opened my business, which I'll touch on now from the beginning of the story. Yeah. But the last 8 years I've focused, yes, I make money by selling clothes. Like that's a transaction that happens. Right. But what am I here to do? I'm here to love. How can I love you? How can I love you as my employee? How can I love you as my friend? How can I love you as a stranger on the street?
Right.
You came in crying because you can't find the perfect dress. I don't have the perfect dress for you. My love, what are you looking for? I'm going to help you find it.
Right.
Send me a DM. I got your info. I'm going to look around. Look, I saw that this store has it. That store has it. That's who I am.
Yeah.
And that's who OHM is. And that's what I want OHM to be for years to come.
Yeah.
God willing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
how you got started.
Started.
Well, basically, I'm a huge fan, and
Yes.
Annie and I were talking about it because I didn't know you, right? Like, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, that was my first job," and I was like, "What?" But I was like, my paychecks are literally directed to OHM. Like, I have like a percentage that's like, what am I buying from OHM this week? So we were like talking about that, but she was like, she was super young when she started, and then you were telling us your story that you were 23.
I was 23
so
years old.
Can you give us a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. I will give you the short version because I can talk forever.
Yeah.
No, we don't. You know, this is supposed to be a 3-hour podcast, right?
Oh, is it? Perfect. I could talk for 3 hours.
I know.
So I was in retail before I opened my own store. I took a little hiatus for a few months at the age of 22. At 23, I was presented with the opportunity from my parents. They said, Vanessa, we have a little bit of money separated for you if you want to do your dream, because it's what I had wanted to do for years. I was just young and they were scared. And I said, I was kind of skeptical, but let's do it. That was June 26th. Fast forward to July 15th. And a lot of struggle because he wouldn't answer my phone call. Obviously, I was a 23-year-old girl who was taking me serious as I was calling landlords. Like, oh, I see your for rent sign or your lease sign. They're like, oh, yeah. And tell me a little bit about the business and you. I was like, well, I'm 23. I want to open a women's boutique.
Yeah.
Literally hang up.
Well, and back then, too, like women weren't really in business as much.
That's why my brother was my partner at the time. My parents saw it as like, okay, he's older than you, and like maybe
they're gonna take him serious.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it happens always. Like the bank would call, like, oh, is Mr. Sauma there? And I'm like, Miss Sauma is the one that like is running the show.
Right, right.
Not to take away from my brother. He was amazing, but like I did the numbers, I did the buying.
Right.
It was me.
Yeah.
With the landlord, I had to get George from George's. I don't know if you remember the restaurant.
Yes.
When we first opened, he was still there.
Right.
And he was good friends with my parents. Well, we would go there so often that we became close. And I had to ask him, I'm like, are you the same? Is your landlord the same guy as 1561? He was like, yeah. I was like, can you let him know that I'm serious about opening a business here? So sure enough, that's how I got my foot in the door in that location. Wow. Oh, I just remembered a sweet story, like the little messages from God that confirmed certain decisions. I originally did not want that space. I wanted another space in Dadeland.
Oh, wow.
Across the street from Dadeland, downtown Dadeland.
Right.
It was still up and coming, though. Half the spots 14 years ago weren't open.
Right.
But it was a brand new spot. South Miami was like a little bit more run down. That side of the street wasn't as popular. But it was home. I'm a South Miami person.
Yeah.
That's why we ended up picking that one. My rent the first month was $3,542.77. That's my dad's birthday.
Wow.
That's like my number for everything. I obviously, with time, all my passwords have changed. I don't use that anymore, which is why I speak so freely on it. But that was like my number for everything. 3542 was.
Yeah.
So after we signed the lease and we did all of that, I saw that number and I was just like,
this
it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Like I fought so hard to not want this at first. But back to 23-year-old me being very lost and confused. At the time, and we've all been 23 years old, so you think you're so old and you need to have it all figured out. And oh my God, I'm 23 and I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
How I did it and what I chose to do was actually very difficult. And the hardest part has been now in my 30s. I'm successful. I'm accomplished. I did everything. But did I get to enjoy myself along the ride? I am enjoying myself now in my 30s.
Right.
But I put so much pressure on myself in my 20s that I look back, I was like, I wish I would have given myself a little more grace, been a little easier on myself, and known it's a long road ahead of us.
Yeah.
I'm at the point now, which is part of what we were talking about before we started in seasons, is like, I'm on a cusp of like reinventing myself. And it gets difficult when you did accomplish so much so young, and you're like, well, am I taking steps back? If I did that, or if I chose to
do something else?
Yeah. And I've been here for a while.
Yeah.
And you just keep pushing forward. With me, with God and all my prayers and how I speak to him, he's guided me every step of the way.
Yeah. It's beautiful that you say that, because we've been talking about transitions and like being in the season of transitions where you're just kind of like, okay, who am I apart from what I've done? And like, just like you said 23, and I started building the wedding photography business at 23. And I feel like for so long, that's all I identified myself with, that it's almost hard to like pull the layers back on who Andrea really is. And you feel like an onion, and you're kind of just like, okay, who else am I at the core? Right. Yeah. And it's like, okay, what actually makes me feel fulfilled? It may not look what people expect it to look like anymore, but at the end of the day, it's what my heart really truly desires. And that sometimes is the hardest thing, because I think the hardest person to be honest with is ourselves sometimes. And it's like, okay, but what actually fulfills our heart? What's actually at the core of like what sets our soul on fire?
Yeah.
And so it's in that sometimes it may not look successful to other people, right? What we choose to do, but it's what's going to really make us feel successful in the end.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
And social media is like a frustrating thing, because they only see a little part of it. And
it's like a highlight reel.
And we've all done it, whether it's a highlight reel, whether it's not even highlights, it's just
glimpses.
The way that I post is just random little, my personal account at least, random little things that just, because I felt like it. It's not that deep.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be, and for some people it is that deep. But then still, you're worried about the opinions of others and what are they thinking, and are you having a hard time? It's like, no, I just like that song. You're looking way too much
I
into
just
it.
like that song.
Right?
Yeah. Like, are you talking about me? No, I don't even know you.
Like, I remember like, I posted, that's why I don't even post when I go to church. I think I posted a story about Boo, and they're like, is everything okay? Like, are you going through it? And I'm like, I didn't know I had to be going through it to go to church.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah. And my only advice is do what you feel like it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And if that means closing your business next week because you're like, I'm done, you don't need to give anybody explanations on why you decided to close it. Yeah.
It's what you can sleep with at night.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Literally what I did.
Yeah.
Close my business. I had clients supposed to be coming on in September, so this month. And I think August 30th or August 29th, I was like, hey, I'm going to pay back your deposit because I'm done.
You're done.
Yeah. And I'm like, because I will break. Like, I can't do it anymore. But
that's
I think
a beautiful thing, knowing what you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah.
Because so many people would have taken that on, probably shown up halfway and
Right.
not even done
Right.
the work that you wanted to do.
Right. And I never want to show up half of myself. I never want to show up with the potential of what I could do or what maybe I should be doing. Like, if I say yes to something, I always want to give it my all.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that my yeses are yes and my nos are nos. There's nothing in the middle for me, at least not right now. But I love that you say, because I think, again, God gives us these gifts, these talents that we're supposed to share and give to the world, share with others, share whether that's in your business or with family and friends. And I love that you say, OHM sells clothes, but that's not what OHM is. It's love. And I was thinking, like, man, as a business, as a boutique, people think of boutiques as, okay, everyone I'm going to hire is maybe in college, you know, in a transition phase or age, and employees really, the turnover rate is high. With you, employees love working at OHM. And I think
But
that's
we can't call them employees though.
Like I
say
it. Okay,
I've never
staff.
liked that
yeah,
word.
I don't either. Tell me your team, your
I love
team,
that.
your girls,
my friends,
perfect.
my coworkers,
Yeah.
like
Perfect.
I the word
I know.
employee just
It makes it so,
that's and the people that use words like that, that's why you have an employee.
Yeah.
right,
That's why it's not a team. They
Right.
feel like an employee.
right.
That's been probably, I would say, 50% of the success of OHM. It's
I
that,
love that.
everyone there
Plays a part.
you as yes, you had your job and your role and your duties, but it never treated you as like
Never.
an employee.
Yeah.
Never.
You're a woman and
Yeah.
you're there to learn and we're either gonna grow together or you're gonna grow to do your own thing
Right.
one
Right.
day.
Right. I love that. I love that. Let's cut the part where I said employee. I'm kidding. But it's so true. And it's so true. And I think too, what I always think of is I remember this story where NASA was taking the first rocket up to space. And they were doing interviews of everybody who worked at NASA. And they interviewed the janitor. And they said, what's your role here? And he goes, I helped send a rocket to space. I might just clean the bathrooms and the floors, but because I did
get
that,
chills.
I was able to send a rocket. And so I think that's exactly
Everybody
what
plays
you
a part.
do.
There is
You
no
make
job.
people
Yeah.
feel so important that they are a part of OHM, that OHM is also theirs, you know? And I think that's what has led so many girls and women to want to work with you, alongside you, and grow the store with you, because that's how I felt every time, every day that I worked with you. It was such a fun, it wasn't just selling clothes. Like, I would have shoppers' numbers, and they would, all the girls at Body and Soul who wanted to shop with me, they would come and be like, okay, I have this event coming up. And I'm like, yay. Like, OHM was kind of like a personal stylist, which
Yep.
I loved.
Yeah.
I loved doing that. And I think that's where you kind of shifted the concept of what a boutique is.
Yeah, and it's not about being trendy or like, obviously we want to sell pretty clothes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's about you feeling good.
Yeah.
Come in and know that there's a group of girls, whether it's one girl on the floor, 3, all of us, we're here to support you. And like, you don't have to buy anything. You can just come in and say hi.
Yeah.
That's a space I wanted to create. And
Yeah.
that is one of my gifts that I
Mm-hmm.
think God gave me. I just love to love. I love
mhm.
people,
Yeah.
which is also why I isolate a lot of the time, because
You have to recharge too. Yes. Because
Yeah.
you're always giving. So you also have to recharge. Yeah.
and I myself require a lot,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I've learned to not overextend myself or overgive.
Yeah.
But in that identity thing that we were talking about,
Yeah.
I think that's somewhere along the line, as my faith grew stronger, as my relationship with God grew stronger, that's when I was like, I don't sell clothes.
Mm.
I love,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I try to inspire.
Right.
Mhm.
Everything else will work itself out. I don't need to know those details. I have the eye. I have that talent. I can shop with my eyes closed. I
Yeah.
can style with my eyes closed. What is the part that fulfills me the most?
Yeah.
though? And it's conversations like this, talking to people like this,
Yeah.
guiding. I always wanted to be the woman that I wish I had when I was growing up.
I was going to ask you, did you have anybody mentoring you in this space, or was it just you took a leap of faith and you just went for it?
I learned a lot. I worked for a very well-known family in retail.
Mm-hmm.
I learned everything from them. They gave me a lot of guidance and trust. But they always tell you learn the best
From your experience.
from
By
the
doing.
experiences
Yeah.
and what you wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And where, excuse me, they were great friends. It was a different environment. I was very much an employee. I was,
So you learned what not to do too.
I just said, what, I just want to be the person that I wish I had. And I
Right.
didn't have it. And my parents are both entrepreneurs. They worked very hard. They have a different work ethic though.
It's a completely different generation.
Yeah.
They're such like a survival generation.
And
Yeah.
work until which is how I lived my 20s. It probably gave me a lot of success. So I won't knock that.
Right.
I think it's important where like buckle down and work
Right.
hard.
Yeah.
But you also burn out sometimes.
You need to know when to rest.
Yeah. Which is one of the things that I respect about your boutique, because you're probably one of the few boutiques that's closed on a Sunday.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy because Sunday is a day that you would think most people are like, oh, wait a minute, let me go shop for this, or let me go buy my last minute, gift for whatever, or an outfit that I need. And you're just like, nope, we're closed on Sunday. It's like Chick-fil-A. Like you're closed on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I didn't always do it.
Yeah.
And then I struggled with that. Okay, then some seasons I would close on Sundays, and I'm like, but business is business, and like people are coming in on Sunday. And my dad, rest in peace, I love that man. Be like, Vanessa, what are you doing? Like, are you sure?
Yeah.
And then I can't remember if it was before COVID or after COVID, I started closing Mondays as well.
Yeah.
But for at least the last 6 years, I said, no, everyone deserves a break on Sunday.
Yeah.
We'll do a couple posts in the morning. Like, we're here to answer your DMs.
Right.
Everybody gets a day off.
Yeah.
Do you feel that people will even shop online? Like, do you feel like it's still successful on a Sunday, even though you're closed? Because like, that's one of the things about Sabbath, right? It's like, okay, you rest so that you can let God do the rest. And so it's almost like, okay, I'm resting, I'm closing the shop. But then on a Sunday, you might have a really good, successful day because people might still shop online.
Right.
Like, have you seen that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we get so focused on, if I'm not working, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But God's like, hey, just take a step and I'll do the rest. And like, we're called to retreat, to come back refreshed.
Right.
And that way we can work even better. So yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
And I definitely think her sales on Sunday skyrocket because I crave Chick-fil-A every Sunday.
Me too.
So I
After
go on
church,
Monday.
I'm like,
yeah. So it's also one of those things that like, you're not always available.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important for business, for your personal stuff, to not always be available and to take designated intentional time. Again, it's a Sabbath with God. So I think that's what keeps you fresh, keeps you not getting tired of like the mundane, because you could have very easily become complacent with OHM.
Yeah.
You could have been like, I'm done. It's running on its own. It's a good watered well machine, all of that good stuff, but you didn't. Obviously, in the 14 years, life happens. And so I kind of want to dive into that of how, has there been any moment or moments that you can think of where you wanted to quit?
Yeah.
Do you want to dive into something? Because I think that's something that our audience wants to hear of, like, okay, well, when life is really hard and when everything is against me and I'm backed up against a wall, like, how do I keep going? I think you have a great testimony in what that, that there is hope, and if you just keep going. So
how do I keep going? By the grace of God.
Amen.
And I will say that time and time again, because there is no other answer for me. I can't put that on myself.
It's so good.
I didn't get myself out of the holes that I got myself into. I didn't get myself out of the depression. I did what I had to do. I woke up, I showered, I worked out, I journaled, I did things and steps that I learned throughout life that I know help.
Yeah.
But that was God. There have been many, many times in the last 14 years that I've wanted to quit, that I've said, this is it, without diving too deep.
Yeah.
I know that it must have been like 6 years in, many times in the first couple of years where there was no sales, where there was nothing happening, and I'm there crying like, what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I move forward?
Well, let's pause there for a second, because how did you know? Let's say a lot of times we live in a generation of instant gratification. And so if you open up a business and there's no sales, how did you continue? I know, were you praying of, God, is this what you want me to do? Because I do think it's hard to decipher what is for you and like when to keep running against the wall or when to close up shop.
Yeah.
how did you, especially at such a young age, decipher like, no, this is supposed to be?
So at 23,
Mm-hmm.
we opened in September. I had just turned 23. So technically I was 22 because
Wow.
my birthday's in December.
Yep.
Those first 2 years, let's say, there was no Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Like Instagram had just started being a thing for personal people.
Right.
I was sending just basic emails, black and white, no images, no nothing. I didn't know too much into that. I wasn't my relationship with God. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school my entire life from pre-K to senior year. Went to church on Sundays, but it was different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your faith has looked like your whole life, but it was different for me. Now I am the person going to church. It's not my parents taking me.
Yeah. Right.
I go to VU as well. I resonate a little bit more with
the teachings, with
the teaching with Christian.
Yeah.
But so at 23, I relied on myself and hard work and burnout and tears in a bathroom.
Yeah.
And I'm just not going to give up.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to give up, and I'm going to do everything I can with the gifts that God gave me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I didn't know them as being gifts. I just thought that
Talent, you're good
I'm
at
a
it.
special person,
Yeah.
and I'm just like really good at talking.
Yeah.
You realize with age and maturity, you're like, that's not me. That's you. What you gave me out there. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And the more I've realized with time, the more credit I give where it belongs, the more it all makes sense and the easier it all is and the more it all flows so beautifully.
Wow.
But yeah, the first 5 years, let's say, was on just blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. And that's why I say I didn't really enjoy my 20s. It was a lot of pressure. I didn't want to take a day off. All my friends were going out on the weekends and partying, and I just felt guilty. That identity crisis. I wasn't 20 years old. I was a 35-year-old woman trying to figure it out in my head. I don't recommend that to anybody.
No, I think that's the hardest thing.
It was a hard way to do it.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun.
And I love that you're speaking on that because I do think especially now because of social media, there's so many young girls that are constantly wanting to just do. And the hustle culture has become such a big thing where it's like they don't know how to take a break and breathe because then they feel lazy or they feel like they're getting left behind because they're comparing themselves to everybody else. And then that's such a problem. Like I feel like when you started, you probably weren't comparing yourself to everybody else. Maybe now it's a little bit more like, okay, yeah, like you can see what other people are doing and stuff. But back then it wasn't so bad. Nowadays they're feeling that pressure. They're feeling the pressure of having to completely compete with all these other women when in reality you don't.
What are you competing
you collaborate with them and it's even better.
And that you never know what tomorrow is going to bring.
Right.
I'm going to be completely honest here. Like super vulnerable. I'm 37 years old. I'm single. I don't have children.
Yep.
Everyone around, the closest people to me, my best friends, and I love them. And I would have loved that life. Married, children. You never really know what you're working so hard for.
Yeah.
I look back and I had such a tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I don't regret any of it. I love where my life is. Whatever the future holds, I'm open to it, but I like where I am right now.
Yeah.
I like the woman that I am. Took a lot of time to get here, but that shift at 23 or at 28, let's say I had bought my house, I was successful. I had a successful business. I had a team. Fast forward 10 years and I'm like, I forgot about my personal life.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't. I've gone through some stuff. I don't really want to touch on that.
Yeah.
But what really makes you successful, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What image? I sleep just fine at night. I love where I'm at. I love my routine. I love the people I'm surrounded by.
Yeah.
But if I was worried about how others were judging me, I don't know if I would have that peace.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I think too, like the world we're living in would define, especially for women, like just blatantly like being at that age. Andrea's 36, single, no kids. So many people define that as unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And it's like, but how could you say that, you know? And I think that's so important, that's where we really have to focus on our relationship with ourselves. Because if we were defining our lives the way the world defines it, you wouldn't be able to be sleeping at night.
Well, that's been the biggest pull and tug for me, is falling into
The trap.
society expectations and then remembering my own expectations of my life and like why I made the decisions that I made. And I think the hardest, which is why I slept with the rosary last night. I was talking to my neighbor, and she's such a beautiful woman. She gifted it to me and had told me to do a couple of things and say a couple of prayers. And it was like the first peaceful night's sleep that I had gotten in a while.
Wow.
And that unconscious moment where you're not fighting the thoughts, they're fighting you.
Yeah.
And that's where I've been at in the last couple of months with my own like life struggles and my dog being sick and back and forth. And then just like, man, I'm about to be 38 and I just got out of a relationship, like back into the dating world, which I don't want any part of. You're looking at me like, you know?
Yeah.
And those thoughts, and I literally remind myself, I'm like, whose expectations am I fighting with?
Yeah.
Is it my own, or is it what I thought the world, what I should have done?
Right.
But I like where I'm
well,
at.
it's also the desires of our heart, because as much as we can say, like, I can speak for myself, right? In regards to like, yeah, okay, I built a business and stuff, but the desire of my heart is to get married and to have kids, right? That is a desire that God has placed in my heart, but it hasn't happened yet. And so there's that tension in wanting to have the faith that you had when you jumped into your business, saying, God, I know you're going to provide. I know I'm doing this and you're going to like direct me every step of the way. But it's almost like in that one area that our heart still desires, we kind of doubt God a little bit. And we're like, man, but we're hearing everybody else's struggles with dating, and we're hearing of like infertility, like, and it's like, am I going to be going through this? And so there's that little bit of doubt where you wrestle with God at night, and it keeps you up at night, and you're just like, my business isn't keeping me up at night. It's this other area of my life that's now keeping me up at night, because I'm not really fully trusting God in it. And that's the hardest part, because that's where the surrender happens. That's where you really need to surrender and just be like, just like I had faith in my business, I need to have faith that you will provide in this area too.
Right.
And that's hard.
It's like you're in my brain, because that is a constant reminder to myself. Like, I did it here. Why is it so hard to like trust and do it on this side?
Because it's for yourself, right? Like if I can have the most faith for you, that it's going to happen for you, and that it's going to happen for you. But when it comes to me, no, God can't possibly. And I think for me, I'm, you know, also my 30s single. I've been, the thoughts in my mind, so many of them have been negative when it comes to that. And one of my biggest prayers has been apologizing to God for not, for doubting him. And you know how you talked about the desires of our heart. I think God now has shifted my thoughts into victorious visions. So I like to have a vision of victory already. So like I like to have a vision of me being married, a vision of me having kids. And so it's like we have to live life. You know, we have to steward the season we're in. We have to steward it well with everything that we currently have. So if you currently have if you currently are a dog mom to two adorable Frenchies, you know, if you're the best aunt to your niece, you're stewarding that well. And when we focus on that, that's when God's able to give us the desires of our heart. And I also want to encourage you too, is I've prayed the prayer of, God, why am I not married yet? Like I thought I was going to get married at 23. Thank God I didn't, because me at 23 was a disaster. But God reminds me a lot of times, like, Annie, you're not just praying for marriage. If you prayed for marriage, I could have given you that already. But you're praying for a godly marriage that never gets divorced. And with the statistics out there, I have to work a little longer in that if I want to give that type of marriage to you. So it's also, you know, we're not just praying like, God, just give me someone, I want to pop out a baby. No, it's like I want to have a family that glorifies God. And that's like a weightier prayer than just to want to get married.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it's beautiful how God has given us all this entrepreneurial spirit to steward something in the meantime, because you were learning how to, OHM was your baby.
Yeah.
Your photography business was your baby. A Market Social was mine. But I think there has to be a reason why we're all going through this, trying to redefine who we are, because I do think God is opening up a door to a new season for all of us to enter. Whether it's not going to look the same for each of us, but I do think I really feel like God is working in all of us right now to be like, hey, I'm going to, the path is going to turn a little bit this way. It's going to kind of go this way right now. And you can either follow me. You can either
a little bit so it's not so uncomfortable. Just turn a little bit.
And just have that faith. And have that faith for me. I used to think, if I have the same amount of faith that I have in you or Andrea, that makes me conceited. Mm-hmm. That makes me, that makes me like, oh, I think I'm better than.
Yeah.
But really, God wants us to be confident in Him. But He wants me to have the same faith I have with anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really powerful thing too. And I think it's beautiful that you're able to be vulnerable with us, because that's when other people can speak life into you, can speak truth into you.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that stood out to me while I'm listening to you speak too is the fact that you're connecting with other women for a reason.
Yes.
And I think you are just starting to dive deep into that purpose. I think you're starting to really get to that point of really asking God, why am I here besides just being a boutique owner? And there's more that He's trying to do with you in regards to how you are stewarding the women around you. Because even you saying you don't want to talk to them as employees, that you don't feel like they're your employees, they're your team. That's not something that a lot of people will say. That's a boss will call them an employee. Mm-hmm. A leader calls them a team.
Right.
It's a completely different thing. So there's things God's doing in your heart that's also stewarding that maternal instinct in you and developing these girls around you. And there's a reason why He's allowed you to be single this long, because that's what you're stewarding right now.
Yeah.
So there's a purpose behind it. And there's something that you're connecting with other women. And I only say it because I've been there too. I've had to really question God and be like, God, why am I single? And I'm the 36-year-old single girl, And I'm like, no, there's still so many young girls around me that you're calling me to pour into. And it's a matter of me coming back to you. We always talk about Psalm 37:4 as delight yourself in the Lord and He'll give you the desires of your heart. Everybody always says God will give you the desires of your heart, but they forget the first part of it, which is delight yourself in the Lord. Because as you delight yourself in the Lord, even your desires of your heart are going to shift.
Yep.
They're going to change. Your vision starts changing, right? In your 20s, maybe you weren't delighting yourself in the Lord. And so your vision was, I just want a boutique. I'm going to do this. I can't fail. I'm going to keep going, right? Now in your 30s, that's shifting because you're also finding more purpose in God. And He's giving you that desire of okay, now you want marriage. Now you want kids, but you had to go through that season. So He's allowing you to even get prepared for motherhood through the women around you. And sometimes we don't realize that. So I think that's one of the things that I always tell the girls. I'm like, whatever we're developing here, we're also meant to pour it into other people, because life isn't just about us.
Right.
And I think sometimes we forget.
Andrea's preaching right now because she has the goosebumps. So
I know.
Holy Spirit's speaking. I was like, dang, she is on it.
How you
No,
knew?
my eyes are tearing up.
Yeah, I'm like, she was preaching right now. Yeah. And it's.
I know we're not done. We still got a while, but I really want to thank both of you for this.
Mm-hmm.
I told you earlier I was very nervous to even come and speak today where I'm at, the season that I'm in. It's been a really rough 6 months. I felt not worthy, not why would they want, what do I have to say right now? And just by speaking with you guys, you remind me we're all human. We're all going through it. And one simple conversation changes the trajectory of someone's life in ways that you can't even imagine.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of crazy to hear you say that you didn't feel worthy to come on the Women Who podcast, because I mean, I've known you for 10 years now. And you met me in a season where it was just my lowest. And again, I wasn't an employee. I was a team member. I was part of the family. I was a sister in Christ in you, even though my relationship with Christ at the time was not
it was
there.
Very different.
Very different. You know, you would take me to lunches and you would just let me cry. And when any other when any boss would say, she has too much drama, too much baggage, we can't, you were a leader and you were like, I see the potential in you. I understand what you're going through. It's just a season, and you helped pull out a gold nugget in me that helped me to, again, it changed, like the conversations I had with you changed the trajectory of my life. Didn't happen suddenly, but with the consistency of that, with the consistency of you pouring life into me. And again, I look up to you so much. So for you to say you didn't feel worthy just reminds me, like, you never know what someone's going through. Like,
and what other people are saying behind your back, because you've been speaking so highly of her for the last few weeks that we were talking about who to put on the podcast. So in your struggle of feeling worthy, she's seeing the worth in you by saying, I can't wait to have her on the podcast
I'm honored.
Exactly. So it's crazy how our thoughts are such liars, how the enemy just really lies to us when he's speaking to us, like when we're isolated and alone, because to us, she was speaking highly about you and you're sitting there struggling.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah. And that's what I've been asking for forgiveness from God lately, because all I've done is isolate myself. It's what I tend to do when I struggle. I'm really good at wanting
showing up for everybody else.
But then I struggle and you just go into hibernation and you're like, let me get through this alone with him, obviously. But and I'll come out the other end and show back up, right?
Right.
Thank you for this conversation, because I will no longer be doing that. I will know it. I do think a little bit of introspection and time alone is very important.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between isolation and solitude.
Yeah.
I think solitude is when you retreat with a purpose, and that purpose is to be with God. I think isolation is I'm a burden. Nobody wants to hear about my problems anymore. I don't deserve to, like, and it's the enemy, the darkness calling you in. And we've been having a lot of talks on the podcast. September was National Suicide Awareness Month, and one of the biggest factor that everyone, when they had their worst moments, was in isolation. And so I agree with you. You have to take time for yourself to do some introspection, to kind of do a deep dive within yourself and see how you can overcome this. But that's completely different than isolation. And we're all called to retreat at some point, but I'm so grateful that you, despite wanting to say no, despite being in this hard season, to still come out and show up. And again, that's why you've been a mentor to me, again, from afar, because life gets in the way. But always, you've always known that
run into you randomly at Target.
Yes, I love it. We ran into Target the other day.
I looked up and I was like,
talk for like 30 minutes, like in the aisle, and like we're just like talking, and people are having to like scoot around. We're like, sorry, like move our carts the other way. But and it's just always, and anytime I've needed her, she's been there.
Absolutely, and always will be.
Yeah.
Always will be.
Yeah, I love it.
So just a last question to wrap it up. What would 37-year-old Vanessa tell her 23-year-old self?
That's good.
Are we going to go deep here? Or are we going to go like...
Yes,
whatever you want.
Yes, let's go deep.
Okay, I will go deep after, but I'm going to start with a really simple one. Chill. Out. TF real
Chill,
big.
TF out.
Oh, yeah.
Chill out. It's all going to work out. It always does. There is no way to fail. There is no way to fail.
Wow.
23-year-old me, I wish I would have turned to God sooner, the way that I turn to him now, the relationship I have with him now. But I also know that life had to kick me so many times to really trust in him the way that I do now. And maybe after this, I'll tell you that one story that click on, just because it gets a little personal.
Yeah,
There's
of
other
course.
people involved.
Yeah.
But where I really looked at him, I said, the moment I released and I said, I can't do this alone. It's on you. I will show up and do my part, because we do have to face the battle, right? But we don't have to fight the battle.
Right.
That's on him. And many times in my life, but this one particular time, I just said, I'm facing it, but I don't know what to do. It's in your hands. I already did my part. And the things that happened after that were just incredible. Yeah. So there is no denying it.
That's beautiful, because for me, I know that logically. But when I go through trials, and the trial that I'm battling right now, I can't even show up.
I know.
So I think it's true. Oh my gosh, God, we have to do our part. And so what I'm struggling with now is just the showing up part. But I also know that I can pray to God, like, God, be gentle with me, be gentle with my heart. And so on the days that I can't show up, he doesn't love me any less. He doesn't love me any more on the days that I do show up. But I think surrounding myself with women who can get up, who do show up, is why this podcast, from like the same way that you are mentoring us and our audience, I knew I needed to be here also. Like, this conversation wasn't just, obviously you're our guest, but I didn't know that this would kind of shift into something inside of me of like, wow, I know some of the stuff that you've gone through and the struggles, and the fact that you can tell me to get up really feels like a gentle nudge of the Holy Spirit being like, see, you can too, because I struggle with showing up. I will go under my covers and not come out of my room. Like, she will have to come to my house and come get me.
What a blessing to have someone that does that now.
So it's just, again, everyone's going through something, and again, it's just God and showing up. So thank you for that reminder, because I needed that.
Baby girl, we all hide under the covers. Whether we say it out loud or we don't, we all hide under the covers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the ones that show up for you hide under their covers too.
Yeah. So, no one else is allowed to cry because I took the last one.
We really do. We hide under those covers.
Yeah.
And what are we hiding from? I think it's harder to be under the cover.
Yeah.
The hardest critic is ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's who we're hiding with.
Yeah.
You're making me realize this. I want you to know that. It's not like I'm just preaching here, because I too fall. And it's so easy to give someone advice and then go run home and get under the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to Pastor Robert Madu yesterday, and the sermon title was "Who You Talking To?" I love him so much. And he was saying how we talk the most with ourselves. You're the one. Yeah. Like, you're the one who tells you what to wear. You're the one who tells you where to go.
Yeah.
You're the one who tells you what to do or what not to do. And it's like, who are you talking to? Like, look in the mirror and make sure that voice, that like your own narrative is gonna be the cheerleader who you are to me, and like who Andrea is to me. Like, myself, I need to be that. Annie, you're the best. Annie, go get up and make it a great day. Annie, this is the Lord has made. Let us get up and rejoice in it. Like, and so I'm in that season of switching the dialogue in my head. Yeah.
And practice and practice.
Yeah.
And practice.
Well, it's the renewal of our mind.
Yep.
But that comes with like breaking old patterns, old habits of how we speak to ourselves. And it's almost like you almost have to stand in the mirror and be like, how would I speak to my best friend? Is that the way that I'm speaking to myself? Because it's so much easier to speak life into our best friend sometimes than it is to ourselves. But it's like, that's not okay. Like, so it's a constant renewal of our minds that we have to do. So
I sometimes think to myself, like, if I spoke to Janelle the way, our producer today, the way I spoke to myself, she'd slap me. She would slap me. Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to thank you so much for being on this podcast. I think it's going to help so many people. It helped me. I did not expect to cry, but it just goes to show everyone who's watching, like we're all going through something. And again, it's just that showing up, taking that leap of faith. Sometimes the leap is a step.
Yeah.
And we have to remember
It's
that
just a
when
small
you,
yes.
and when you only see one set of footprints in the sand, just know it's because God's carrying you.
Yeah.
So Vanessa, we love you so much.
Oh,
Thank you so much. When you watch this, if it resonated with you, leave us a comment, like, subscribe, do everything you have to do when it comes to podcasts and social media, so you never miss any conversation from the Women Who Podcast. I'm looking at the wrong camera. See you next time.